Welcome to Oddities, a show where we take a look at locations in games to find details, moments, and minutiae we just think are interesting. Celebrating the mundane that someone still had to put thought into, and supposing tiny stories that could coincide. So grab yourself a tea or a coffee, and sit back as we explore together. Today we're here in the Left 4 Dead campaign, The Sacrifice, arriving by train in spectacular fashion. Smoke mixed with fog veils what awaits, drowning the dockside area in a thick atmosphere of anticipation. Already we can spy the tyre tracks of this military truck that has come through the fence here, ploughing into a poor boat that was minding its business in the dock. With all the luggage, clothing, and suitcases lying about, it could be there were quite a few people making quick getaways on their vessels, loading all they could on board and putting some distance between themselves and the dying city. The dock itself must be pretty strong. Presumably, the truck smashed into it as it fell, but not a single plank is out of place. There's this yacht here that was towing their boat, perhaps trying to launch it in the panic. It looks like they've backed into the barrier, dislodging the boat and leaving it teetering over the edge. If you had enough people, you could probably push it over and hope it lands upright. Though I don't suppose most passerbys were in a charitable mood. Speaking of launching, it doesn't look like there's actually a boat ramp on this side of the dock. Looking around, I couldn't see one, nor any beaches or sections of the shoreline you could back onto. So I'm not too sure how you go about getting your boat in the water without a crane. I thought this warehouse here might have an undercover ramp, but it doesn't lead out onto the water. So this club is only really for yachts launched elsewhere, and those wanting to leave them parked on a trailer, I guess. With the condition of the building's walls, I don't suppose this was the most high-end club, a place for proper enthusiasts, rather than the wealthy one would usually associate yachts with. Inside, we can see that someone made an attempt to board the place up with plywood. Perhaps this corpse, whom we can find in the office. It looks like they were nursing a bite to the neck when they passed. It's clear this club building became quite trafficked by survivors or the infected, with plenty of detritus and clothing lying about, almost forming a desire path through the space. People or things entering and making a loop around the desk towards the office. Beyond the club, we can see that someone tried to make an emergency landing out on the street, to limited success. That being said, I don't see anybody within, so maybe they survived. It looks like the club also served as a storefront, where you could buy and sell boats, as well as recycle batteries. Perhaps some of those parked out the back were for sale. Making our way down the alleys and towards the waterfront, we can come across an unsuccessful boat launch. Probably because they didn't use a ramp. This fence segment has been twisted and broken, perhaps damaged when the bridge came down, and this opportunistic driver decided to risk putting the boat on the water. But with the height of the drop, it seems the trailer fell away, almost pulling the car with it and tipping the boat over. The water looks quite shallow, but still probably deep enough to hide the trailer from view. It's boats galore around these alleys. The place clearly enjoying some maritime culture. Fishermen, hobbyists, divers, all spending time on the water. With the amount sitting around, it's clear this place was taken over by the infection before anyone could make use of them. Most having to abandon their vehicles in the middle of preparation. There's a car flipped here, having been thrown from the road. It looks like it may have sat in the path of the plane, the aircraft pushing these two cars as it landed. But with the amount of tanks in the area, it could be this car became a missile, tossed by one as it raged through the streets. Someone used this front loader to create a little makeshift barricade, using barrels, tires, and pallets to form a wall before lighting it on fire. I wonder if, morbidly, these bodies are part of the barricade, or just meant to convey the infected stopped by said barrier. It seems then that the zombies came from this direction, pushing survivors towards the train line. Speaking of, there's been a huge collision here, likely caused by the destruction of the bridge. The warehouses we pass beyond looks to be part of an export depot for copious amounts of bricks, all stacked high in neat piles. Many have been strewn over the ground in the chaos, and I'm sure explosions here would turn them into deadly projectiles. Good cover from the infected, but not a place to be should these stacks begin to fall. They sit around this loading dock, which leads into a storage space for gravel or asphalt. It looks like this was the factory where the bricks were made, transported through the facility on giant flatbed carts, baked in massive kilns and ovens to set them solid and prepare them to be used in construction. Even in its dormant state, I can imagine this place is extremely hot, and likely prone to fires now it's been left unattended. Someone tried to hold up in the office overlooking the factory floor, but with only one entrance and nowhere to escape, it seems they were quickly overwhelmed. Out of the safe room, we can come to another loading dock. Unlike the rail yard in the previous episode, at least this place's logistics make sense, with the loading dock actually leading out to the road. Whoever tried to close this area off likely didn't have the keys to this truck, only pulling the gate as far as the cab, calling it good enough and hoping the infected didn't squeeze their way through this easily passable gap. And what do you know? There's another jackknife truck here. Someone escaped this storage yard by bashing through this fence, leading us out into a murky forest. The lighting turns a sickly green as more fog rolls in. We can find a pond here, cut off from the river and likely fed by rainfall. Perhaps it was once an estuary or a channel that ran further inland, now cut off by the docklands that have dammed the path. Someone lies dead in this garage across the way. Covered in a sheet, it seems a friend or loved one bothered to lay them to rest with some dignity. This place specialized in truck or heavy vehicle maintenance and repair, and were clearly very proud of their business. It looks like the building has been mostly looted. with little furniture and supplies. Some survivors probably made their way here to collect tools that could assist in the upkeep of their cars as they made their escape. Or the military may have requisitioned them for their own equipment, their supply lines likely failing as the flu took over more of the country. Good thing the repair shop was here, for next door is a fuel depository, where tankers would come to fill up and transport the liquid throughout the region. Judging by the hazardous material codes on the trucks, they store gasoline here, transporting it in underground pipes from these giant tanks. I'm sure this was one of the first places people flocked to, hoping to find some that could be siphoned to keep their trucks and cars running. But with this truck ablaze, it's probably not a good idea to stick around. We finally arrive in an area you could conceptually launch a boat from, if there was any water to launch it into. Unfortunately, it looks like most of it has drained out, beaching everything here. This barge has run aground, blocking anyone from leaving anyway. It looks like someone managed to survive in this garage here for a time, boarding the windows with wooden planks and using their weapons to keep the infected at bay. If these tally marks are their kills, then they've managed to take down 54 zombies, which ain't too shabby. It looks like the infected finally managed to break down the front door, but with the back door open and undamaged, hopefully, the survivor managed to slip away. Down the way, we can find another depot, this time for cement mixing trucks, who could fill up under this funnel here. There's a huge conveyor system running from this transport ship to this giant pile of gravel or crushed stone. It looks like the pile could slip over the retaining wall pretty easily though, probably damaging the conveyor under the weight should it cause a slide. The ship was in the middle of making a deposit when the infection overcame the area, leaving the job undone. Inside the bowels of the vessel, we can see how much more it carried. Choking dust kicked up as we make our way through. You can imagine how hard it would be to breathe in here, and how runny your eyes would be. Using a barge to make our way back into town, we can come across a giant defensive wall set up by the military. It looks like it was more so to stop vehicles, rather than the infected themselves, perhaps trying to control this exodus people were making towards the coastline. With everyone pouring through, I'm sure it would have been difficult to enforce a quarantine and search for infected individuals. It seems an irate truck driver made an attempt to get through the barrier, but it stood up to the task. And here we are at the finale. A myriad of generators requiring fuel in order to lower the bridge and make our escape. Here, we get a look at some of the residential buildings in this town, constructed on a rustic stone street. Despite looking rather old, it's clear the place enjoyed upkeep. There's minimal dirt and lichen build-up between the tiles, and the hedges and plant life are mowed and trimmed back. The road has been ground down over time, constant vehicle and foot traffic causing damage that has been repaired with asphalt and tarmac. It looks like there was a bit of repair or painting being done on some of the buildings. This coat of beigey yellow paint perhaps planned to encompass the whole structure. Storefronts had awnings and newsstands, though no decorations or advertising. It looks like they were forced to evacuate when the military rolled through. All their produce and supply cleared out and the place boarded up. We can find 2 more barriers nearby, and some portable toilets for soldiers to make use of while stationed here. There's an oil stain on the road from some old accident. A little parking area that requires a permit to utilize. A warehouse for boxed goods. Huge turbines that look like they might assist in the movement of the bridge. And a bar, which featured a jukebox, lovely polished wood floor with some booths, and a pool room upstairs, where you could drink and play a game with friends. With that, we can escape by making the titular sacrifice. Canonically jumping down as Bill to let the others escape, though you can sacrifice any survivor. But in all likelihood, you're playing a modded game, and this moment sees the death of Hatsune Miku or something. Thanks for watching. The sacrifice is a fun gauntlet to run, and the decaying docklands are great to explore. Hopefully, you enjoyed our look at the Left 4 Dead 1 campaigns, even though this was all technically filmed in Left 4 Dead 2. Regardless, it was fun to make, and we appreciate you taking the time to watch. Shout out to our members: Thane Krios 8, Anna A2640, Nash Kula, Renee, Patrick Connaughton 4171, Speed of the Earth, Nathan Armstrong 6085, Call Me Jips, Dadney, and Callum Kenny. Stay tuned for more oddities, odysseys, observations, open roads, opinions, and live streams. And we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.